Hi everyone, I'm Joe. Today it's time for me to do my favourite books of 2022 video. Favourite books of yours videos are always highly anticipated and looked forward to on any booktube channel, and I know I look forward to watching them for my favourite booktubers as well, and I look forward to making this one, despite it being quite a challenge, because despite it being called favourite books of the year, I don't really like using the actual word favourites in regards to these books exactly. To me, favourites means that I prefer these books over other books I've read in the year, and that these books are somehow better than other books in the year, which isn't really accurate. These are more a case of these are more memorable and more stand out to me in my memory than other books, really, than others, which these definitely do. And there are 7 of them in total, and without any delay, I'll get straight into talking about the first one. And for the record, the reason that the camera is pointed slightly over this way and I'm not central is because there are ebooks on this, so I'm going to put pictures of the ebooks here. Now, the first of those is indeed an ebook, and that is 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City by K.J. Parker. I read this at the very start of 2022. This is a fantasy novel based around a walled city, unsurprisingly, which is on the coast. It is a large city, successful, powerful, but obviously being a fantasy kingdom especially, this has enemies. And essentially the enemies are not happy with this city, frankly. They attack it and start sieging this large successful city. And there are problems with this because this city has basically got overly big, overly complacent, and they don't really know how to handle anything anymore. But one individual, of course, the main character of the story, who is not a general or anything, he happens to be an engineer, building things, aqueducts in particular. He happens to have a certain ability, of course, to think differently about problems. And of course, this is a siege. Sieges are about thinking differently. So this character, with his building and engineering background, has to basically sort of influence and try to stop the city from falling into enemy hands, of which there are a lot, because there are large armies, very greedy individuals that want this city flattened and want it controlled. And it's a really interesting book, really interesting plot line, a good selection of characters. They all work together really well, and it was just an enjoyable read. I only bought this because of the author, K.J. Parker. I've read things by him before, although not quite like this, and I've enjoyed them, so I thought, well, let's see what this is like. And I'm really glad I did, and I would recommend this if you like his other work, because it's different, frankly, and it's got a different feel to it than his other work, but it's still really good, and it's certainly got humour in it as well, which I really do appreciate. The second book that I read, and that stands out to me of 2022, is The Missing Page by Sebastian. This might be a surprise to some people because this is a romance novel primarily. It was also historical fiction. It is set after World War II, I believe. It could be World War I, but I'm pretty sure it's 2. And this is actually the second book set in this series, of which I am obviously a fan, because me talking about a second book in the series for one of my standout books or favourite books of the year is unusual. So, it is really impressively written, great characters. The basic idea of it is essentially it's a sort of not exactly a murder mystery, but kind of. Basically, a crime has been committed. The main 2 characters have to end up solving it together. And by the way, the romance in question is a male-male romance, so if that is something that you do not appreciate in books, then you won't like this. To me, it doesn't faze me in the slightest. I'm not bothered by, the gender of people that are being romantic. It's still the same to me, and I'm very open-minded. And the 2 characters work together really well. They bounce off each other and sort of, really build each other up really effectively. There's humour in it at times, but there's also very personal moments and very introspective moments between them, and indeed between other characters. And it's just a nice book. I actually enjoyed reading this. it's a book that you can just read. It's not really heavy or really deep book that you have to do incredible amounts of thoughts to figure out what's going on. It's more just a little bit emotional in terms of, like, you understand where the character's coming from, and you go along for the ride, and it's really enjoyable overall, which is why it really stood out to me. The third book that I'm going to talk about for 2022 is A Desolation Called Peace by Arkady Martine. Now, this is also slightly unusual for the same reason as the previous book, and that this is the second book in an ongoing series. So, apparently ongoing second books are working out for me last year. Now, A Desolation Called Peace is based around the same few characters as the previous book, but this time, essentially, this is obviously a science fiction book where in this one there is a enemy fleet of spaceships, basically at the border of this big space kingdom. Essentially, nobody can understand what this alien species of spaceships is trying to say. They're just sitting there looking threatening, and they might suddenly rush into the occupied space that the current people are living in. Nobody wants that to happen, so they need to find somebody, obviously a translator or communicator of some kind, that can actually talk to them, understand them, and try to work out either way that we can solve the problem without having a full-scale war, which is problematic for various reasons. So the main characters from the first book get brought back. They have to communicate with the aliens, they have to communicate with each other, and they have to communicate with the kingdom that are asking them to do it, because frankly there's issues here in numerous ways, and characters just have to get on and get it done, but they also don't like the kingdom entirely. I mean, the main character that's doing the translation is actually part of a enemy kingdom of thoughts from the one that are actually asking them to do it. So your enemy is asking you for your help, but when you happen to be friends with a member of that civilization, it's hard to say no, frankly, which obviously doesn't happen. They do, help, and things do start getting worked out throughout the book. Obviously, that's not a spoiler. And this is well written with interesting ideas, interesting concepts, and I just really enjoyed it. It carried on the characters that was built up in the first book really well. Obviously, I'm hoping that there is a third book, because frankly I really like this one, and I would highly recommend this series as a whole. Now on to the fourth book, which is finally a physical book, and that is The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yōko Ogawa. This is a fairly short book, actually it's the shortest on this list, I believe, and this is an interesting one because this is a fiction book. It is set in Japan, and it is based around two characters, unsurprisingly: a professor who is an aging mathematics professor, and his housekeeper who is helping him with day-to-day chores, making sure he gets fed, tidy up, and that sort of thing. The professor had an accident years ago, and he has a short-term memory problem, so he needs to put notes on everything. And it's a very sort of sweet tale, a very personal tale of this aging professor that he still loves mathematics and the world of mathematics, are obviously really advanced, and the housekeeper and her son, who are trying to look after him, and they are trying to understand him, he's trying to understand them, he's also trying to remember who they are, because of course he can't barely remember them from moment to moment. His memory is about 90 minutes long or so. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how long, but it's roughly 90 minutes. So essentially he puts little notes on them to say who they are, and actually he does start getting almost a little bit better in a way, although he doesn't get better of course ultimately, but he sort of just try to force himself to at least have some vague notion of who both the housekeeper and her son are. It's a very personal tale of them where they're just trying to look after him. He's trying to accept their help and also trying to talk to them about mathematics because that's his passion in life, that's what he knows. And his wife passed away years ago, so he hasn't got much else left, and that passion for mathematics and passion for life really stays with him and the housekeeper and so on. And it's just a really interesting dynamic which I really enjoyed, and I would really recommend this. It's just a really nicely written book. It's just nice to read. I mean, the word nice comes up whenever I talk about this book. When I talk about original, I use the word nice multiple times. It just is ugly. It's a very nice book. The second physical book that I'm going to talk about for 2022 is A Summer Beyond Your Reach by Zhao. Now this is a science fiction short story collection which I absolutely loved, because this has got a collection of stories which are all really personal, really well written, and just really make you think and enjoy and really get into the world that the author has created. Of course, this is not a Western science fiction focus. This is obviously a Chinese author, unless I'm very much mistaken. So the perspective and the evolution of the author's writing is not a Western sort of focus style, which obviously, being a Western person, from the UK, I'm used to. This has got a very different focus to it, but one that I really enjoy because the focus on characters and their development is different from Western perspectives, because effectively people in the West, but this is well known in fiction, have a very specific way of looking at families, friend groups, society in general. Of course, non-Western and other parts of the world have different viewpoints basically, and this is one that I think is really well worth reading and investigating because it's just really well written, amazing characters, an interesting variety of stories, and the author writes a little piece at the end where she talks about why they have written these stories and what it means to them. And actually that was actually really nice to read as well, why the author has written them and how it means to them, and when they, what their views on their own short stories is. So it was interesting to read, and I would really recommend this one. Well, this was also the most difficult to obtain book on this list because I actually tried to buy this book on multiple occasions prior to actually buying it this time, and for some reason the orders kept being cancelled over and over again. I think this was actually the fourth time I actually managed to get hold of this book. I ordered it, I thought it was going to get here, and then suddenly it was cancelled. So I'm not sure what was wrong with this book. I think it's something to do with the publisher had issues with rights or something in the UK. I'm not entirely sure what it was. The sixth and penultimate book that I'm going to talk about is Not So Much Said the Cat by Michaek Swanwick. This is another short story collection. These are all really varied. They are very strange with feeling, some of them, because they are interesting with how they are laid out, interesting with feel, and it's got also a little bit of a distinction on the fact that this is the first and only book I have actually started to read whilst I was on a plane. Yes, I was on my way back from the Balkan in Chicago and I actually read the first short story on a plane. So, I've never done that before actually. So that's a bit of a unique perspective as well. And all the short stories in it are really well written. They're thoughtful. They're varied. I can't really talk about obviously the individual short stories because because of what they are. By definition, they're too short. I would spoil anything. But I would say that they are well written. They've got remarkable plot lines, and he does manage to fit in a lot of thought and a lot of detail into short stories. I mean, short story writers, I think good ones need to be able to do that. They need to make you get into the story very quickly, and they need to get your attention quickly and try and focus you in on the point of the story very, very quickly indeed. in an efficient way, but also whilst not rushing it. Like Swanwick can do that. He doesn't rush you, but he knows how to, get your attention, keep your attention, and make a point, and make you think in a very short time. And this is an impressive example of. So I would heavily recommend this book because it's just amazing overall. And finally, the last book is the first in a series, by the way, hopefully not second for a change, and that is Unconquerable Fun, written by Elliot. For the record, when I read this book only relatively recently in November, I did not realise this was the first book in what will be a trilogy. So I don't mind, but I mean they've got a bit of a wait till the second and third books in a couple of years' time, which is fine because this was brilliant, and frankly second and third books will be worth waiting for. This is a science fiction novel set obviously in a sort of kingdom that is between different planets, with spaceships and such. Basically, there is this large kingdom which has the character of Sun, which is the main character, and her mother. Her mother actually is the ruler of this kingdom. Sun is merely the queen's daughter, although she has got a lot of power in her own right. And basically, as you would expect, being a space opera, by the way, that there is a large war brewing between this kingdom and others that do not like the kingdom. And frankly, it's all about a varied selection of characters in different locations doing their tasks, as space operas always do. You've got a large cast of characters doing different things. They end up sort of coming together and then splitting back apart again multiple times to do a greater plot line. This follows that sort of trend fairly well. It's got brilliant characters. They work together well, as you would expect for space opera, and it's one that I didn't expect to be talking about, frankly, much after the book was read, but it does really stand out to me. I really enjoyed this, and it's a fun book to read, and I'm really looking forward to the second and third ones, which is, as I said, slightly annoying because I've got to actually wait for them now, which normally, if I think I'm going to like a book like this, which I did, then I'll normally wait quite a long time until I actually read the first one, normally until the second one's out. That way I can read the first, second, and then I've only got a fairly short time for the third. So, that's unfortunate, but I don't mind because it was a brilliant book that I'm very happy that I've read. Just to show that I got to wait for the sequel. Oh well. And I would heavily recommend this one because it's just a really good book. So, and that is it for all of the books that I've read and that stand out to me in 2022. If you've read any of these or you would like to, then please leave a comment and we can have a talk about them. Obviously, if you want to know anything more about these, then again leave a comment and I'll try to answer to the best of my abilities. Also, let me know what your favourite books or most memorable books of 2022 are, because I'm always interested in hearing people's thoughts on what they've read, and obviously also that might inspire me to read those books, because I'm always into and eager to try and broaden my reading preferences. I don't just want to be stuck reading one thing. I always, as you can tell by this, I've got romance, historical fiction. I want to broaden my reading at all times. Obviously science fiction tends to dominate to a degree, but I certainly want to broaden at all times. So with that said, that is it for this video. So the links to all these books can be found in the description box below, as well as my social media. And with that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day and next year with another favourite book of the year. Bye for now.